In this episode, we're going to talk about chlorella. I'm very excited about chlorella as it looks like a better alternative to spirulina. It doesn't carry some of the toxicity concerns or possible neurodegenerative effects that surround spirulina, and we'll also see why it has a better nutritional profile than spirulina and is a true plant-based source of iron and B12, with studies actually showing that it raises levels in human participants. And on top of all that, it has tons of studies and research from universities and elsewhere showing lots of strong benefits in many different areas, which we'll cover as well. So let's get into it. All right, guys, thanks for listening. I'm really excited to bring this episode to you. Just a little bit of a background story. I had a simple, basic little video on YouTube that has become my most popular video now. And in it, I was just talking about why I chose to stop spirulina. And I cannot tell you the amount of backlash I've gotten from that video. I've gotten some positive comments, but I was just surprised. I've just found like some people are very protective of spirulina. And I've actually uncovered even more research since then. And I found some stuff that Dr. Michael Greger, the whole food plant-based doctor, actually has out, and he apparently has been raising the red flag against spirulina for a very long time now. And he was actually saying that he gets more mail about blue-green algae than anything else. And he says that people just love their blue-green algae or pond scum, and they just can't get enough of it. And I've had the similar experience. So I'm really excited in this episode because I have found basically an alternative and a better alternative to spirulina for all of those who want to keep consuming a blue-green algae. And it's actually got the green light from Dr. Greger, and it has more benefits than spirulina without the potential side effects. So let's dive into that. All right, so I just want to give a quick recap of why I stopped spirulina in the first place. So I feel like the main benefits for most people are going to be the antioxidants that come from spirulina. I'm on the whole food plant-based diet, and I eat fairly healthy, antioxidant-rich foods that are plant-based. And when I was on spirulina, I really didn't notice any difference, and that might be why. I think maybe for someone who doesn't eat as healthy of a diet, they may get a bigger benefit from spirulina. I think that you can maybe just get antioxidants from another source and also feel better if you're not getting enough antioxidants in your diet. Honestly, I don't know the concentration of antioxidants in spirulina. I don't know if it's considered like super high or low. I just did a episode on coffee, which talked about the high antioxidant level in coffee, if you want to go check that out. And there's some other plant-based foods we know about, but I don't know the exact concentration for spirulina. They've had studies where they've looked at the antioxidant contents of different plant-based foods, but I'm guessing because spirulina is not as common, it wasn't included in those studies. So we don't really know the antioxidant content compared to other plant-based foods. And so I also felt that spirulina was kind of pricey at the time, and it really didn't work out for us as far as just the cost. And to further add to that, I found some concerning evidence that there was high toxicity levels and heavy metals that were present in most spirulina. and some other concerning things that could do damage like your liver and whatnot. And even Dr. Michael Greger has a lot of research on that topic, and he talks about that a lot. And he just says basically steer clear of it. It is just not safe. And then I also found at least one other doctor who was saying that spirulina potentially has what he called like a pseudo B12 in it, meaning it could basically block regular B12 from being absorbed in your body. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But just all those things added together gave me the decision to, stop taking spirulina. And I found out that Dr. Greger did the same thing. He said he threw away his spirulina and never turned back to it. And I do want to mention that someone said that I do have a blue spirulina video with some of the benefits. And I will say that I'm open to blue spirulina. And the reason for that is it's hard to find a lot of information on blue spirulina. But basically what it is it is the antioxidant from spirulina that's been extracted. And so when you get blue spirulina, apparently all you're getting is the antioxidant by itself. Almost like I would think if you took vitamin C directly from the orange and then just consumed the vitamin C as like a pill. And so because of that, I would assume that you wouldn't be getting some of the toxins and negative things that would come with regular spirulina. Of course, I don't know this for sure, so be aware. But if you're really set on wanting to do spirulina, I would definitely recommend blue spirulina. And I'm on the fence about that, but I'm open to it since it's just the antioxidant by itself. So now let's look at chlorella, what it is, how it compares to spirulina, and why it's a better choice. All right, so what is chlorella and how does it compare to spirulina? Well, chlorella and spirulina look very similar. They're both green in color and they have antioxidants which give them the green color. And they both have a similar taste. However, spirulina is a blue-green algae, whereas chlorella is just a green algae. And as Dr. Greger talks about, blue-green algae can produce a neurotoxin, and this neurotoxin has actually been found in samples of spirulina on the shelves. But chlorella does not have this neurotoxin present since it's just a green algae, and he says it's a much safer option. And Dr. Michael Clapper talks about how spirulina has a pseudo B12, which basically looks like the real B12, but is slightly different. And a study found that 83% of spirulina actually has this pseudo B12, which can block regular B12 from being absorbed. Whereas chlorella has been found to actually have active B12 in it. And there's been at least 2 studies which found vegans and vegetarians taking chlorella actually saw an increase in their B12 levels and improvements from taking chlorella. So we know that it's active and actually being absorbed by the body. Many years ago, at some point, chlorella and spirulina were competing for popularity, and chlorella is grown over in Japan, and it was more popular in that region. And they were finding that people were having photosensitivity issues after taking it. And it seems that the chlorophyll was not being digested properly in people's bodies. And that was leading to bad effects when they were exposed to the sun, like blisters and things. But some recent science figured out how to basically break the cell wall of the chlorella, and so now that problem is gone. It's digested, and that's why when you do get a bottle of it, you'll see something that mentions open cell wall, or something along those lines. And I'll leave a link down in the description to some really low-cost chlorella that you can get. And that's another benefit, is the cost is very cheap for chlorella. You can get, if you just want to do a 1-month supply, depending on if you do pills or powder, it's anywhere from only like $5 to $10 for the month. And if you do like a 6-month supply, you can get it as low as almost $5 a month. So it's very, very cheap and affordable. So that's a huge benefit of it. Now let's look at some of the nutritional similarities and differences between chlorella and spirulina. They both contain antioxidants, which is what gives them the green color that you see. That's common in a lot of plant-based foods. Their color comes from the antioxidants. And as far as the protein content goes, it's very similar protein content, with each of them having a high level of the essential amino acids. Now, I would like to say that some people will consider spirulina a high protein source of food, and that's a little bit incorrect. And I think the misunderstanding comes from the idea that it is percentage-wise high in protein. Chlorella is as well. But the thing is that at the doses that you take it, you get very little protein. It's maybe, 2 grams, maybe up to like 4 grams per day. And you can get 5 grams of protein just from a slice of bread alone, or a scoop of peanut butter. And foods like tofu have even way more protein than that. So it will just be a very small fraction of your daily protein intake. And you'd have to consume a lot of it, probably like unsafe amounts, just to have a high level of protein from it. So I wouldn't consider it a high protein food. Another thing is, people think about it having all the essential amino acids. And as I talked about in a previous podcast on protein, some research has found that all plant-based foods do have all the essential amino acids, but some are in low levels in certain foods. But when you eat many different foods in your diet, they make up for each other. And, the ratios of essential amino acids will be fine in your diet. So that's not really a concern unless you are, on a desert island and that's your only food source. Then that can be helpful. And that's probably why they studied spirulina as a potential food for astronauts, just because of the limitations when you're in outer space. So in that sense, it's good. But for most people who have plenty of food and protein sources, it's not really something that you want to take for protein, but it is an added benefit. So both of them give the same amount of protein. We'll just leave it at that. And so that's about where the similarities kind of end. When we start looking at the other nutrients, for example, the omega content, we see that chlorella actually has a higher omega-3 content, which is a benefit since most people don't get enough omega-3s. So check out, especially on a plant-based diet, so check out my podcast on that. And then as we start going down and looking at the other nutrients, chlorella has way more vitamin A, first of all. And then when you get down to iron, this is interesting because some people will take spirulina for iron, and sometimes it's recommended. And there have been, I have seen like a study that was done on, I believe, newborns or infants in a third world country where they were deficient in iron. and it was compared against a control group of another intervention trying to bring their iron levels up. And the success rate, it was higher in spirulina, but it wasn't dramatically higher. It was like a 10% greater rate of improving, getting them not iron deficient, basically. But there is a study done with chlorella that I was reading on pregnant women who were taking chlorella, and by the second and third trimesters, they saw a dramatic drop in anemia levels and improvements in iron levels. And if you look at the nutritional breakdown, there is 5 times the level of iron in chlorella than in spirulina. And we see that it's being absorbed well by humans at the same time. So that's a huge benefit. The next thing to look at is B12, which is also higher in chlorella. And I found a very, very fascinating study with chlorella and B12 that was given to vegans and vegetarians who were actually B12 deficient. And they noticed a remarkable improvement in the B12 levels on these human subjects. And this is remarkable because I got some pushback, of course, with the spirulina and B12 controversy. And the only thing they have is one study that's been done on rats with spirulina. And they looked at the B12 levels of the rats and gave them spirulina, and there was some improvement. However, as I've mentioned in the past, you really want to take studies on rats with a huge grain of salt, because many, many times they rarely ever translate well over to humans. So you need like more evidence to back that up, which they just don't have a lot of studies on spirulina and B12 with humans. None that I can find, just that one on rats. So it looks like chlorella is a huge winner there, because we're seeing an actual improvement in humans and the ability to absorb the B12, and we don't potentially have any kind of funky pseudo B12 stuff happening that might be blocking B12. None of that. So that's very promising. The next nutrient is zinc. Chlorella has 133% of daily zinc compared to 4% for spirulina, so a huge difference there. And another one is phosphorus. And chlorella has a good amount more phosphorus, 25% compared to 3%. So that's a clear winner there as well. All right, so far we've seen that chlorella has a better nutritional profile than spirulina, and it also doesn't carry some of the toxic concerns that spirulina has, or any of the neurodegenerative concerns as well. And we've seen that it's a good source of iron and B12. But there's more great things about chlorella as well. There have been tons of studies done showing just numerous benefits for chlorella. It's actually pretty exciting. So let's jump into some of those now. Okay, so one of the things talked about with chlorella is the ability to detoxify the body or remove heavy metals or toxins, and it's claimed that it can kind of go in and bind to these heavy metals and help remove them from your system. And there are some studies done that showed some potential effects on preventing any kind of toxins when introduced to different kind of carcinogens, kind of reducing them in the body. And there was a study that showed that chlorella reduced the oxidative stress in smokers. And in the study, they said chlorella could prevent disease and mortality associated with smoking. So this is interesting, and I think this will translate to many aspects of life. I don't think it's just the smoking, but that's good news if you're a smoker. But you see, it's got a high antioxidant level, and so oxidative stress is just caused by our environment in general. So you're going to, even if you're not a smoker, you're going to be getting oxidative stress, and that leads to disease in a number of ways. And so any way you can get rid of that oxidative stress, whether through antioxidants that are found in chlorella or elsewhere, that's going to be a good thing. So apparently, chlorella seems to help with that. And one of I would say, the biggest benefits I've seen for chlorella is the ability to boost the immune system. And they have just tons of studies on this. Like there's a study showing that it improved these NK cells, and basically, like, I think these cells that can attack cancer, so it could potentially help to prevent cancer. They also had some studies done on mice. Like I always say, take a grain of salt, but it did show that the chlorella could stop tumors from growing, and I believe also helped with cancers. And they found that it can keep the immune system functioning normally during chemotherapy for people with cancer. So that's a big thing. And anyone taking kind of immunosuppressant medications as well, they found benefits there. It basically keeps the immune system functioning at a normal level, despite the stress that's being placed on the body. For people going through chemotherapy or having their immune system suppressed. And if you're an athlete, this is pretty big. They also found that chlorella was, they tested it on athletes, especially endurance athletes. And the thing about, endurance athletes is that their immune system will drop, sometimes dramatically, when they do, when they exert themselves a lot and they're putting their body under a lot of stress and for a long time. And that causes your immune system to also fail. And so they get a lot of like upper respiratory tract infections, for example. And so they found that when they gave the chlorella to athletes who were being in very stressful training situations, their immune system stayed almost normal. It didn't have that dip in the immune system that was seen with athletes not taking the chlorella. So that's a huge advantage, especially if you are an athlete. And speaking of athletes, they also have found a study showed that athletes taking chlorella had a pretty dramatic increase in aerobic performance, something about being able to take more oxygen into the lungs for the athletes who are taking chlorella versus the ones who are not taking chlorella. So that's another good benefit. Also, when they gave the chlorella to breast cancer patients, they reported just better quality of life and less fatigue. So it can help, maybe to take away fatigue and help you feel better, especially if you're in a stressed situation. And another huge benefit they've found seems to be that chlorella can lower cholesterol as well as blood sugar levels. And they found there was like a meta-analysis, and I think it looked at like 19 studies, and it found that overall chlorella was lowering total cholesterol and blood sugar levels. And they found a positive impact on it lowering blood pressure as well, and stiffness in the arteries. So that's a big deal. I'll be coming out with a future podcast. They even found recently where high blood pressure in the 30s was linked to Alzheimer's later on in life. It's kind of interesting. So you definitely want to get your blood pressure down. And they noticed that I don't even think they were trying to study weight loss, but one of the studies they found that chlorella was tremendous for weight loss, and they saw noticeable reductions in body fat percentage. And they actually summarized and said that chlorella is actually very good for weight loss. So that's another thing to consider if you're, trying to lose weight. And they found that for anyone struggling with mental health, that chlorella may also have some benefits. They gave it to some patients who were, I think, depressed and anxious and going through some kind of program. And the participants that received the chlorella with the treatment compared to the ones that didn't receive the chlorella but just got the treatment, the ones taking the chlorella saw a noticeable difference in their symptoms of depression and anxiety. So it could also have tremendous impacts for just mental health. I think I've also seen some potential benefits just for your brain in general. A final thing, and they haven't done really any studies on this that I know of, but chlorella has commonly been used in Eastern medicine, Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, just as a way to increase energy. So, I assume maybe they've seen results, and so that's why they recommend it for energy. But anyway, if you're looking for energy, it might be something that'll help you out as well. So that's another benefit. I do want to quickly mention that there is the possibility of what I've heard of is an allergic reaction for a small number of people with chlorella. I think it also happens with spirulina as well, any of the blue-green algae. So, just be cautious. I am not a medical advisor, so do not get any medical advice from me. Ask your doctor, seek him or her out if you have any questions, and before changing or taking anything if you have concerns. But obviously, start slow with it, and if you do notice any kind of negative effects, quit immediately. But that being said, even Dr. Greger was saying, for most people it is completely safe and fine. So I will, take his word for him on that. All right, guys. Well, hope you learned a lot in this episode. I am very excited about chlorella now. I've got my bottle coming in the mail, and I am eager to try it out. And I'll leave some links where you can get some as well if that's something you want to try. And maybe I'll make a follow-up in the future on how I'm doing and the results. But like I said, I had been stopped taking my spirulina, and I'm eager to find this now, as it does not have the same concerns that spirulina has, and more benefits. So, what's not to lose? And it's pretty inexpensive as well. So I'm stoked about just all of the studies that they've run and just the amazing benefits they've been seeing from chlorella. So let me know what you think as well, guys. And thanks so much for listening. I appreciate everybody who listened and took the time out of their day. And until the next episode.